We are back at bigleaguepolitics.com, joined by one of the most prominent investigative journalists of our time and a Big League Politics contributing writer, Laura Loomer. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Patrick.
Laura, you have a very big story today about Las Vegas. Tell us about it.
Well, the one-year anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting was about a week or so ago, and I was on the ground in Las Vegas for the memorial. And 1 year later, you have key players involved in the shooting investigation who are now running for the positions in Nevada. One of them is Steve Sisolak. He is campaigning currently to be the Democrat governor of Nevada. So coincidentally, I happened to be in Starbucks while I was in Vegas, and Steve Sisolak walked into the Starbucks I was sitting in. And so I confronted him. I confronted him about his desire to make Las Vegas, or the state of Nevada, a sanctuary state, his desire to ban guns, right? His infringement, his constitutional infringement on the rights of American citizens. And I also asked him about his role in blocking the evidence of the Las Vegas shooting from being released, right? Because Steve Sisolak is very close friends with Sheriff Lombardo, who we have been reporting on extensively at Big League Politics. And you can see in the video that he didn't really want to answer any of my questions, but these are all questions that the media in Vegas should be asking him, but have failed to, of course, question him on. And if he wants to be governor, I think that we need to have a governor who is going to actually be open to transparency and answer the questions of reporters instead of running away like a coward, right? Dodging all of these very important questions that matter to Nevada voters.
So what specifically did he do with Sheriff Lombardo with regard to the Las Vegas case in terms of blocking evidence?
Well, Steve Sisolak is currently serving as the chair of the Clark County Commission. So he's a Clark County commissioner. And just days after the Las Vegas shooting, he stood up on stage with Sheriff Lombardo at one of the press conferences where he announced that he was creating a GoFundMe account to raise millions of dollars for the victims. Well, $12 million has been raised in that fund alone, and to this day, 1 year later, it has not been dispersed to the victims of the Las Vegas shooting. So there's a lot of questions in Vegas pertaining to this fund. What did Steve Sisolak and what did Sheriff Lombardo do with that money? Did they pocket it? Right? Where's the $12 million that was raised, and why haven't the victims of the Vegas shooting and their family members received any of the money? Right? This is something that I also asked him that will be posted in a longer version on my YouTube channel of the video, which he didn't want to answer to. And on top of that, he's played a very big role in this political situation with Lombardo. After Lombardo was exposed as being a liar, after I confronted him at the press conference in Vegas and showed that he and the FBI were lying about the official Vegas shooting timeline, which forced him to then correct the timeline, Steve Sisolak was campaigning with Lombardo for his re-election campaign. He was endorsed by Sisolak. Lombardo received his endorsement. Meanwhile, Lombardo, who claims to be a conservative, was then speaking at the Republican events in Nevada while palling around with Steve Sisolak. Right? And it just goes back to the fact that there's so much dirty politics here at play in Las Vegas. That's why they call it Sin City. And it just seems like everybody there, from the Republican side of the aisle to the Democrat side of the aisle, but especially the Democrat side of the aisle, they are just so concerned only about money and not really the betterment of the people of Nevada, the truth about what happened in Vegas, protecting people in Nevada from getting killed by dangerous MS-13 killers, a story that I broke several months ago that again forced Lombardo to hold a press conference to address.
So Laura, what is the truth of Las Vegas? Who's Brian Hodge? What's the ISIS connection? And what do you think actually happened?
Right. Well, the truth about Vegas has yet to come out, but you and I both have been reporting extensively here at Big League Politics about Brian Hodge and his connections to the Vegas shooting and why law enforcement has failed to investigate Hodge. So Brian Hodge is an Australian man who lives in LA who claimed to be in the room next door to Stephen Paddock at the time of the shooting. Well, I was doing my research and I found that Brian Hodge was actually staying in a different room on the other side of the hotel on the 32nd floor. Brian Hodge is suspicious because he had all of these interviews with Australian members of the press, and he was giving details of the shooting from an insider perspective. He was saying things that had not yet been released by the police such as the fact that the window was broken with a special hammer. The police, nobody had said that until Hodge mentioned it. And you would only know that if you yourself broke the window or had used the hammer yourself inside the room. And on top of that, he has been traced to Turkish business owners in New Mexico, where he went directly after the fact, individuals who potentially have terror ties, right? He said that he was hiding in the bushes, but his phone traced back to him being at the Naughty Pine Motel in northern Las Vegas with men whose plates were registered to a town in Mexico where they have an ISIS recruiter base. So ISIS did claim responsibility for this attack numerous times, right? They threatened to attack Vegas multiple times prior to the attack. And as soon as ISIS claimed responsibility, Aaron Rouse with the FBI, and this was hours after the shooting, he came out and said that they were confident it was not ISIS. Well, how would they know when they hadn't even conducted an investigation to determine whether or not it was ISIS? According to the FBI, they said that the full Vegas report would be available by the one-year anniversary. Well, here we are today. It's October 11th, right? 10 days later, and we still don't have it a year and 10 days after the fact. So once again, the FBI is lying. And all I want to know is if this really was just a lone shooter situation and Stephen Paddock was just some crazy guy who shot everything up, why are they slow rolling all of the evidence pertaining to the Vegas shooting? Why not release all of it at one time? What are they hiding from us?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the media hides a lot of things, and I want to move on to Minnesota because you've been doing such good work there. And we just got the news in yesterday, actually, that Paul Ryan's PAC, the Congressional Leadership Fund, is actually investing in Minnesota now in the 1st and 8th districts, trying to pick up Republican seats there because the tide has really turned in the polling in the last couple of weeks since the Keith Ellison scandal. Can you tell us about confronting Keith Ellison and what he's accused of?
Yeah, so Keith Ellison, of course, he was the congressman in Minnesota's 5th congressional district, the first Muslim to be appointed to Congress. And he's running now to be the Attorney General of Minnesota. Despite being tied to people like Louis Farrakhan, who's an absolute racist and Jew hater, despite being an open supporter and advocate and endorser of Antifa, which our government recognizes as a domestic terrorist organization, Keith Ellison has also been accused of domestic violence by several women. And when you compare it to the accusations made by the women who accused Brett Kavanaugh of things like rape and sexual assault, right, even though they had no proof, these two women, Karen Monahan and Amy Alexander, have actually provided evidence in the form of police records and medical records which document a long history of abuse, both physical and emotional, verbal abuse from Keith Ellison. And it just seems like the Democrats don't want anything to do with it, right? They want to attack Kavanaugh and take other men down with these fake accusations and accusations of assault and abuse without any evidence. But then when we show them their deputy chair, right, the vice chair of the Democrat Party, the #2 most important or powerful person in the Democrat Party today, we show them this evidence and they don't want to hold their own accountable. So it's a very close race between Keith Ellison and Doug Wardlow, the Republican challenger in Minnesota, to become Attorney General. And you know, if you live in Minnesota and you're watching this, you really need to make sure that you do vote for Doug Wardlow, because having an Attorney General like Keith Ellison, who endorses Antifa, a domestic terrorist organization, has ties to jihadis like Linda Sarsour, anti-Semites like Louis Farrakhan, having dinner with the president of Iran who chants death to America, death to Israel, right? This guy is a jihadi himself, which is why he thinks he's done nothing wrong by beating women. So I would implore that all people watching, if you live in Minnesota, make sure that you vote on November 6th for Doug Wardlow, Attorney General.
Laura, I saw a conspiracy theory online that you and Linda Sarsour are actually the same person.
Yeah, right. I know, that's so funny though. Well, actually, it's really funny because the picture that people did side by side, it's because of our faces. We have a similar shaped face. It's very round and small. And then now that I have dark hair instead of blonde hair, I don't really know what color her hair is because she wears a hijab, but and her nose is a lot pointier than mine too. But who knows? I mean, maybe with some makeup and maybe with the right apparel, a makeup artist could make me look like Linda Sarsour, and I could potentially go undercover sometime.
Well,
That
Laura
sounds like
Loomer
a
is
good
not wearing a hijab.
idea.
We know that, Jim. No hijab for Laura Loomer. Laura, tell us about the Islamic threat, because you were up in Minnesota for a long time, a few weeks. I mean, how overwhelming is it in Minnesota? Are there terrorist cells up there? I mean, do you see this presence in that state?
There are terror cells. There are terror cells in Minnesota, and it's a very serious threat. You have mosques, jihadi mosques, who are hosting people like Tariq Ramadan, who is the grandson of Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And then just days after his visit, an apartment building blew up in Minnesota, where it was owned by a Muslim, right? So look, this is out of control. The situation in Minnesota is out of control. It is so bad that if you walk down the street that has now been called Little Mogadishu because of the overwhelming presence of Somali migrants there, there are men who walk around in orange vests that say Sharia police. All right, they are trying to build a fence that is going to cost the taxpayers $800 million in the state of Minnesota so that the Muslims in Little Somalia, Little Mogadishu, can have their own Sharia no-go zone. It's getting very bad. I mean, two weeks ago in Shakopee, Minnesota, at a theme park, you had a riot of over around 100, reportedly 100 Somali men who went in there. Some of them were armed with knives, and there were reports that they were terrorizing people. They had to evacuate the entire park on Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Total cover-up by the mainstream media, total cover-up by the local media, because no one wants to offend the Somalis. You have jihadis running for office. Ilhan Omar, who wants to replace Keith Ellison's seat in the 5th Congressional District. She was holding a fundraiser for Hamas 2 weekends ago.
Yep. And why do you think the liberals and the Democrats support these Muslim radicals so strongly? Is it money, or what is it?
Because they view them as brothers in arms in disbanding our Constitution. They have the same end goal. So they're working together to defeat our Constitution and destabilize our country.
Mm-hmm. And the UN website still, all these years later, has that study up saying that the United States needs replacement migration. And I think that's honestly what the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War were really all about: destabilizing the region, creating a refugee crisis, and then importing that into Europe and eventually the United States.
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. And Keith Ellison, his first line item on his agenda for if he does become Attorney General, he wants to import 100,000 more Somalis into Minnesota. And he's working to challenge Donald Trump on his policies that limited the amount of refugees to come into America. I don't understand why the Democrats are so concerned about bringing in all these migrants from terror hotbeds, low IQ individuals, people who, have nothing to offer here in America, right? They're not skilled workers. They're not people of high education. They're not exceptional individuals, right? These are people who are coming from war zones and terror hotbeds. Many of them share the same radicalized ideology that, calls for the killing of non-believers like me and you, anybody who isn't a Muslim. Why would you want that here? Right? Why would you want that here?
Well, I think when Obama called ISIS the JV team, he was referring to the JV team for the Democratic National Committee. Laura, tell us a little bit about, about your work going forward and about these midterms. I mean, what's at stake here? What are some of the races that you're focusing on? And are Republicans going to be able to hold the House and Senate?
Well, I'm really focused on a number of races across the country, of course. Minnesota, right? The race between Keith Ellison and Doug Wardlow, because if Keith Ellison becomes Attorney General and Ilhan Omar is his replacement in Congress, you're going to see full-blown Sharia law implemented in Minnesota. So it's very dangerous. I'm also focused on races in Michigan and in Florida, the gubernatorial race between Andrew Gilliam and Ron DeSantis as well. So those are races that I'm particularly concerned about, because all the cases that I focus on are cases in which these Marxist leftists, right? These leftists who are running for positions, they all have ties to jihadis or terrorist organizations. Another one that I'm concerned about is the race between Ted Cruz and this Beto character, right? Because this Beto seems to be attracting a lot of people. He's seems to be very popular, but his policies are very disastrous, of course. And with all of the illegals in Texas, it just makes you wonder if the Democrats might just be able to pull off this victory. So it's very concerning. You have Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, who is running unopposed. She's probably going to become the first Muslim woman in Congress. And she assaulted me, if you recall. This is a woman who called for the eradication of Israel. She's a Jew hater. She tried to storm Donald Trump when he was talking one day. She's violent. She assaulted me. I had to file a police report. I mean, there are some very scary individuals who are running to be our representatives.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, we've been pointing out a lot of the Democrat hypocrisy. For instance, Sherrod Brown was accused of beating his ex-wife in the divorce settlement, Mazie Hirono. Yeah. As we reported, a woman in the flight training program that Mazie Hirono started went up to Mazie Hirono and said, we're being harassed. There's sexist harassment going on here. Mazie Hirono covered it up. So the gall that she has to then turn around and condemn all men during the Brett Kavanaugh case. Yeah. What did you make of that? To me, it was kind of like white America on trial. You know, Brett Kavanaugh is kind of the symbol of what's going on.
The Democrats, of course, they never play by their own rule book, because if they really want Kavanaugh's life to be ruined, well, then why haven't they ruined Bill Clinton's life, right? They're so concerned about assault and rape and allegations, but you know, when you look at the people who are perpetuating most of these assaults on women, it's Democrat men. I mean, just look at what happened with Harvey Weinstein today. A New York prosecutor dropped some of the charges against him. The Democrats still aren't talking about the fact that Hillary Clinton, after she lost the election, she had lunch with Harvey Weinstein, who had then been accused of rape by then. They don't care about assaulting women. I think we can all say that Harvey Weinstein is a sexual abuser, a rapist. Hillary Clinton is married to a rapist, Bill Clinton. She's having lunch and dinner with rapists. Look at Anthony Weiner. Her top staffer is married to a pedophile. Right? Do the Democrats care about abuse? I don't think so, because if they did, they would honestly be working to displace Keith Ellison and shun the Clintons. But now the Clintons are going on a tour before the midterms, and all these Democrats are rushing to support another rapist and abuser of women.
Are you going to be joining the Clintons on this tour?
I hope so. I plan to. I mean, I would love to join them on tour. You know, I would love to join the Clintons. I haven't received my formal invitation, but yes, one way or another, I'll be joining.
You might get the Seth Rich invitation. Tell us about Florida. Is DeSantis going to beat Gilliam?
I hope so, but DeSantis really needs to step up his game. I feel like there's a lot of low energy here on the ground because DeSantis really doesn't seem to be campaigning very hard here in Florida. And Gilliam, there's Gilliam signs all over the place. I barely see any DeSantis signs anywhere I go. And I see different polls. Some of the polls say that Gilliam is ahead. Well, maybe he is, but now Gilliam for sure is going to capitalize off of this hurricane in Tallahassee because he's the mayor of Tallahassee. And now that he can use this and say, oh, well, look, vote for me because I helped you guys so much and this is how I'm going to be as a governor, right? This hurricane is actually going to benefit Andrew Gilliam's campaign. So Ron DeSantis, I think maybe he underestimated what it was going to be like running against Andrew Gilliam simply because he is a Marxist. But as we've seen, Marxists are getting elected across this country. It's very scary. It's very unfortunate. But Ron DeSantis really, really, really needs to amp up his campaign.
Yeah, we could say that about a lot of Republicans, and it's going to change the electoral map quite a bit for Trump in 2020 if Gilliam is the governor of Florida. All right, Laura, any closing thoughts? What are you on next? What's your next project? I can't keep up, so I'm always playing catch up with you.
Yeah, I'm running all around the country, right? Tracking all of these different campaigns and monitoring them, and we will see. Who knows? I pay close attention to lots of different races and what people are doing, and keep my eyes open. You never know. I mean, somebody could be getting Loomer today, tomorrow, next week. But I am going to be confronting individuals and holding them accountable, especially in regards to issues of their hypocrisy pertaining sexual abuse, sexual assault of women, just a number of things. You see Eric Holder, his comments about how we should kick Republicans. Who knows? Maybe I'll be Loomering Eric Holder. You'll just have to stay tuned and subscribe to my website, lauraloomer.us, to receive all the exclusive updates where you'll find out first.
Well, there's a lot to be concerned about, but Today, Kid Rock and Kanye West were at the White House, and Kid Rock gave a White House address. That was pretty cool. So as long as President Donald Trump is winning, I think things are in the right direction.
Yeah, well, you know, the left has their deranged celebrities to help them, and luckily we have level-headed people like Kid Rock and Kanye West to help us. And Kanye's a very nice guy, seems to have a lot to say, very intelligent, and I think he's going to wake a lot of people up and really inspire many in the Black community to vote Republican.
All right, you know her, you love her, you hate her. Laura Loomer, follow her on Twitter. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.